Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Roneen Davis, and I am a Grantee Technical Assistance Manager at the Council of State Governments Justice Center. Before we begin, I have a couple of technical notes. If you encounter any connection or audio problems during this webinar, please call WebEx Technical Support at 1-866-229-3239. We'll also post that number to the chat box screen on the bottom right-hand corner. Unfortunately, there are some connection issues we may not be able to resolve during the webinar. However, we are recording today's webinar, and it will be posted on our website along with a copy of the slides used in today's presentation. On today's webinar, we will review the Second Chance Act Comprehensive Community-Based Adult Reentry Program Utilizing Mentors, or Adult Mentoring Grant. Throughout the webinar, we encourage you to submit questions in the Q&A box on the bottom right corner of your screen. We will have time at the end of the webinar to address the questions you have submitted, and we'll do our best to get through as many questions as we can before we conclude today at 3:30. Joining me for today's webinar is Andre Bethia, Policy Advisor for Corrections at the Bureau of Justice Assistance. You will also hear from your Adult Mentoring Grant TA providers, Jan Dela Cruz and Maureen Ritchie. After introductions, we will introduce the fiscal year 2016 cohort of grantees and review a few highlights from your proposed programs. We will then go over the grant program's history, expectations, and examples of some successful past grantees. We will then discuss the support available to you as a Second Chance Act grantee, including technical assistance from the National Reentry Resource Center, before wrapping up today's presentation with time for questions. Please note that contact information for each presenter will be posted at the end of the webinar. I'm now going to turn it over to Andre Bethia to tell you a little bit about the Bureau of Justice Assistance.
Thank you, Roneen. Hello, everyone. My name is Andre Bethia, and I'm the Policy Advisor for Corrections at the Bureau of Justice Assistance, U.S. Department of Justice. I am really excited to welcome you and congratulate you on what was a highly selective and sought-after opportunity. So we are glad to have you join this wonderful adult mentoring portfolio. And BJA is here to, along with the Council for State Governments Justice Center, here to help you achieve impact in your individual regions. The Bureau of Justice Assistance, also known as BJA, our mission is to provide leadership and services in grant administration and criminal justice policy development to support local, state, and tribal justice strategies to achieve safer communities. Through Congress, the Second Chance Act has supported over $300 million in reentry investments across the country. www.bja.gov is where we're located, but feel free to reach out to us as you kind of unpack the different areas. You'll hear the Council of State Governments Justice Center, who are your TA providers, technical assistance providers. I'm actually your policy advisor. And I also have colleagues here at BJA who will work with you on many of your grant adjustments and your change of scope should you have them. So it's a great opportunity. We want you to stay updated on what's happening in BJA and know that you have a wonderful team who is really there to help you engage and use evidence-based, promising practices for your particular region.
Thank you, Andre. Now I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Justice Center. The Justice Center is a national nonprofit organization that serves policymakers at the local, state, and federal levels from all branches of government. Staff provides practical, nonpartisan advice and evidence-based, consensus-driven strategies to increase public safety and strengthen communities. You can find our website at csgjusticecenter.org and can follow us on Twitter at CSGJC. In addition to serving policymakers, the Justice Center provides technical assistance to all Second Chance Act grantees through the National Reentry Resource Center, or NRRC, which is funded through the Department of Justice's Bureau of Justice Assistance. We are constantly adding new content and resources to our website, and we send out a monthly newsletter that provides information about the latest research, funding opportunities, distance learning events, and other news about reentry. We encourage everyone who hasn't done so already to sign up for the newsletter by going to csgjusticecenter.org/subscribe. We're now going to discuss the current cohort of grantees. As Andre said, I also want to congratulate everyone on receiving this grant award. It's an exciting opportunity for community-based organizations like yours to support those returning from incarceration. Out of numerous applicants, you 5 were selected: WestCare Washington, Texas Offenders Reentry Initiative, Memphis Leadership Foundation in Tennessee, and the Ridge Project in Ohio, and the Fortune Society in New York. You will find that many of you have similar aspects of your programs while also taking different approaches or addressing different challenges. I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues Jan Dela Cruz and Maureen Ritchie to tell you a little bit about each of the programs in this year's cohort.
Thank you, Ronin, and thank you, Andre. I am really excited to work with this cohort, and I've spoken with some of you already. So I just want to thank you again for joining us on the webinar. Quickly, I just want to kind of just go through each of my grantees and just talk about them briefly, and in case there's anything, highlight a couple things that may not be on the screen. You may not see on the screen here. WestCare Washington. I'm excited to work with them because they are. So along with partnering with the Washington DOC, they're also working with the Washington Department of Veteran Affairs and delivering mentoring services to veterans, which is exciting and something new for me personally. They will also they will have a random control trial part of their evaluation, which you'll find in many and a few of you in this cohort will have. We'll share that in common. Next, we have Tory in Texas, Tory also. I also work with Tory on an OJJDP Young Fathers Grant, which is also providing mentoring services, but with focus on young fathers 18 to 25, and we're currently in the mix of working with that, and I'm pretty excited to start working with them in the adult mentoring grant as well. Next we have the Ridge Project, who also had an OJJDP Young Fathers Grant, which they just finished up. A couple of highlights of this program. They are, along with kind of providing driver's license services and some education services, they also have a mobile app they're incorporating into their program along with the Tyro suite of services. They're also doing a random control trial as part of their evaluation. Lastly, I have the Fortune Society here in New York. Excited to work with them as well. As a New York native, I know the Fortune Society pretty well. They are working with various jail facilities on Rikers Island, and important to note about the Fortune Society is that they have over 50% of their staff it has been previously justice involved or in some form of recovery. They're also doing a random control trial as part of their evaluation. So with that concludes my group of grantees. I'll turn it over to Maureen.
Great, thanks, Jan. So the FY16 grantee that I'm working with this year is the Memphis Leadership Foundation. Their CAMP project, which stands for Collaborative Adult Mentoring Project, serves men and women returning to Shelby County, Tennessee from the Shelby County Division of Corrections. The program features approximately 6 months of pre-release mentoring in the form of group, individual, and one-on-one mentoring. And mentees are also enrolled in a cognitive restructuring therapy pre-release. In addition to recidivism, some of the other outcomes that Memphis Leadership Foundation is looking at include parenting skills and also workforce readiness, with a special focus on some careers that are in high demand locally, like flooring, waste management, forklift operation, things like that. They're using volunteer mentors, and they're attempting to match mentors and mentees partially based on their zip code of residence to try to facilitate better communication and ease of interacting with each other. And as you can see, they also have stated a special focus on veterans as an underserved population in their Division of Corrections. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Jan and Maureen. We'll probably be mentioning this again later in the webinar, but so everyone knows, if you've received a Second Chance Act grant before, you probably had experiences to interact with other grantees, and this is just an opportunity to see a little bit about what each program is doing, but there will be more opportunities throughout the course of your grant to actually share some of your successes, some of your challenges, see what everyone else is doing to help address similar issues. It's one of the benefits of the TA that we can provide. So going forward, we're now going to take some time to review the Adult Mentoring Grant Program. Under the Justice Center's Corrections and Reentry Division, I oversee the Community Initiatives portfolio, which provides technical assistance to all Second Chance Act grant programs that are awarded to nonprofit, community, and faith-based organizations. These grant recipients stand out because the majority of Second Chance Act grants are only awarded to units of government, such as departments of corrections or sheriff's offices. While many of them may subcontract with nonprofit agencies, only certain Second Chance Act grants are available directly to nonprofit agencies, including tribal and faith-based organizations. These grants almost always require a mentoring component, including the grant programs that you've been awarded. In addition to your grant program, we also work with grantees who have received Second Chance Act funding from the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, or OJJDP, to run mentoring programs for young adult parents and Latino youth. BJA and OJJDP together have invested around $85 million of Second Chance Act funds to over 180 community and faith-based organizations to run reentry programs that incorporate mentoring. And as you heard, we have a couple examples in the fiscal year 2016 cohort of grantees who have also received funding from OJJDP to do more focused mentoring work on the young fathers population. This funding has supported 220 mentoring-focused Second Chance Act awards across the country in 46 states and the District of Columbia. In addition to providing you with opportunities to share each other's successes, challenges, and strategies, your TA providers work with past and existing grantees around the United States and can provide opportunities for peer sharing and learning with those grantees. I'm now going to turn it back over to Maureen Ritchie to talk about a few examples of past adult mentoring grantees who have taken an innovative approach to certain aspects of their programs.
Great, thank you. So like Ronin said, here you can see a few examples from earlier adult mentoring grantees and some of the creative program elements that they've implemented in response to some local needs or challenges that came up in their programming. So for example, on the left, Workforce Connections serves a rural and semi-rural 8-county area in western Wisconsin, and they were having trouble recruiting volunteer mentors for their program, in part because they required an 8-hour orientation and training for new mentors, and it just didn't work with a lot of people's schedules to travel that long distance to go to the training. So a creative thing that they ended up doing was investing in some web-based training tools and taking the majority, not all, but the majority of their training online. And after they did that, they saw mentor recruitment really surge, and that has continued as long as they've continued using that. And, you know, buying that software was an investment for the organization overall. They don't just use it for training mentors. They also now have that invested to build the capacity of their organization overall, since they have satellite offices across this 8-county area. In the middle, you see Pathfinders in Tarrant County, Texas, and they also provide an array of training options for their volunteer mentors, including a pretty rigorous requirement for ongoing training, but they allow the mentors to select from sort of a series of topics on what they want to continue receiving training in, and also offering things at different dates and times to be flexible, especially around working people's schedules. So they'll have, you know, breakfast meetings, weekend meetings, things like that, so that they're trying to be really accommodating of different volunteers' time schedules. Pathfinders has also done a really great job of utilizing groups to keep their mentees engaged. Again, they offer a variety of pro-social activities and group events at various times, you know, morning, during the day, in the evenings, on the weekends. And they've really leveraged a lot of great community partnerships to get activity space, things like food and activities donated. So they've also seen a lot of community engagement really increase from offering that. And then through the use of those groups, they get a lot of mentees attending because they're interested in these activities, and then from those experiences, they see a lot of their one-to-one mentor matches sort of developing more organically. And on the end, you see the Connection, Inc. in Connecticut. They used the randomized control trial that was part of their mentoring grant to evaluate not just recidivism and how that was impacted by mentoring, but another outcome of interest was how participation in mentoring affected engagement in other services, such as case management. So this program used peer mentors as part of their Reentry Assisted Community Housing, or REACH program, that provides temporary housing to men and women on parole or probation. And through this project, their REACH mentoring program, they actually won a 2016 Outstanding Criminal Justice Program Award from the National Criminal Justice Association. So those are just a couple of really cool examples of what existing grantees are doing and sort of how they've tailored their programs to their communities, and to really try to meet the unique needs and challenges of their service populations.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Maureen. At this time, we're going to turn it back over to Andre Bethia at BJA, who's going to walk through the goals and expectations of your grant program.
Roneen, thank you. And to Maureen, that was an excellent display of the elite status of that displays the elite status of this particular cohort. And to you, Jan, that was great walking through some of the current grantees and their initiatives. We look forward, all of us look forward to helping you, the listening audience, kind of bring you in to this wonderful community of learning and exchange of ideas. So the purpose of the grant is to promote more effective and successful reentry for formerly incarcerated individuals through the utilization of comprehensive evidence-based wraparound reentry plans that address the identified needs of the individuals and are supported by trained mentors. The expectations of this grant, as established by the Bureau of Justice Assistance, is that the target population needed to be identified by medium to high risk as determined by a validated criminogenic risk and needs assessment tool, must be confined at the time of enrollment, and the individual must be 18 or older and convicted as an adult. In addition, our expectations were laid out that you had to partner with a corrections agency and facility. There were delineated clear policies and procedures outlining the mentoring component, offer pre- and in-service mentor training, a commitment to ongoing data collection, after the pre- and post-release case planning, and then comprehensive post-release services. And lastly, there was a program evaluation, and it had, it was a priority consideration and not required, but still want to emphasize the importance of collecting data and evaluating the program, even if it's not a full research study. Grantees will receive intensive technical assistance, we call that TA, to support the development of a planning and implementation guide, also known as the P&I Guide. The P&I Guide will assist each grantee in developing and refining a strategic program plan that incorporates evidence-based programs, policies, and best practices. The P&I Guide will assist in building capacity, identifying strengths and areas that need improvement, fleshing out ideas, and refining concepts, cursively addressing program proposals and targeting TA. All right, that's it for me. I'm passing on back to you, Roneen.
Thank you so much, Andre. All right, so now we're going to talk a little bit about the support that's available to you as a second chance at grantee, some of which was alluded to by Andre in his section there around the technical assistance that you'll be receiving. So there are three primary agencies that will provide you with support. BJA, as you know, is your funder and primary contact for any issues related to the functioning of your grant. Tracy Willis is the state policy advisor assigned to the adult mentoring grantees, and any questions regarding budget adjustments, changes in your scope of work, no-cost extensions, etc., should go to her, and I will be posting her contact info later in the presentation. The NRRC, as I mentioned before, is contracted by the Department of Justice to provide technical assistance, and I will go into what that will look like in a little bit more detail on the next few slides. Primarily, though, it's important to know that we at the NRRC are your contacts for programmatic support. Lastly is CSR. They are a contractor of the Department of Justice, and they manage your performance measurement tool, or PMT, and can provide technical support with the reporting process. So every grantee is assigned a technical assistance lead from the NRRC who will assist you in completing the P&I guide, supporting the development and implementation of the content of your program, helping you assess progress, and linking you with other grantees and the field to share successes and common challenges. Here you will see who your assigned TA provider is. Both Jan and Maureen have been supporting the work of mentoring grantees over the past couple of years. Jan will also be working with young fatherhood mentoring grantees, and Maureen also heads up the Justice Center's housing and reentry work. Though Maureen or Jan will be your primary TA contact, we work as a team alongside one other TA provider who specifically works with young fathers and young mothers mentoring grantees to support all of our grantee needs. You will also see here your BJA State Policy Advisor's contact information, Tracy Willis. We are in regular contact with BJA to coordinate the support for all of the grantees' needs. Our technical assistance can look a variety of ways. Each grantee will have monthly phone calls with their TA provider throughout the course of their grant. We also regularly host and distribute webinars and opportunities to interact with other grantees. In addition to this, based on the needs of your program, we may be able to provide expert trainings on a number of issues, including risk, needs, responsivity, gender responsiveness, the intersection of behavioral health and reentry, sustainability, and various other topics. Sometimes grantees will benefit from a site visit where TA providers, and in some cases consultants, will work with program staff on the ground to address specific challenges. So speaking specifically about the Planning and Implementation Guide, the P&I Guide is a tool that is meant to flesh out the ideas put forth in your proposal and identify strengths and areas for improvement. The P&I Guide will help establish baseline information about the proposed program and help your TA provider target their assistance. One key benefit of the guide is that it provides a single document to reference key programmatic information. While further details may be laid out in program manuals and policy and procedure documents, the P&I Guide will be a good reference point for program staff and partners to grasp what the program is trying to accomplish. Keep in mind that the guide should be a living document that you can update as changes occur, whether they are small adjustments or formal changes requiring approval from BJA. Now let's break down the process. After receiving the guide, please fill it out being as accurate and concise as you can. We encourage you to bring in program partners for the parts of the guide that address their involvement in the program, such as your corrections agency, evaluator, or treatment partner. When filling out the guide, clearly indicate if something is still in the planning phases or if it is ready to be implemented. For example, if you are partnering with 2 facilities but only have an MOU with one, specify the status of the second MOU and whether it has been drafted yet or is simply awaiting a signature. The P&I Guide will be completed in stages. We ask that you submit the exercises to your TA provider prior to your monthly call. Together you will discuss the content of the guide and your TA leads feedback and update the guide as you go along. Each call will cover 2 to 3 exercises from the guide. This is an overview of the P&I Guide. It is an opportunity to think critically about your proposed program, and I encourage you to have an open dialogue with your TA lead as they learn from you about your area's unique systems and challenges. So what happens next? If you haven't done so already, please review the SCA Grantee Orientation webinar. This webinar was presented to all Second Chance Act fiscal year 2016 grantees and covers key information from BJA regarding your grants management process and expectations. You can find this webinar on our website at csgjusticecenter.org, and your TA provider can send you a link to the recording. Your TA provider should have reached out by now to set up your introductory calls. During your first call, you will have a chance to talk about your program and any changes from the original proposal that you anticipate. Your TA provider will also take this time to walk through the P&I guide process with you. Before we move to the question and answer portion, I want to highlight a few resources from the NRRC. The Justice Center will be releasing a document known as Mentoring as a Component of Reentry that discusses considerations for integrating mentoring for adults into reentry programs based on the experiences from the field. This document was put together by staff at the Justice Center with support and assistance from existing grantees, peer mentors, and other professionals working in the mentoring and reentry fields. Currently on our website, you can also find a guide for states and faith-based and community organizations developed to offer practical recommendations for how state government officials and community-based service providers can better use limited resources to help people released from prisons and jails successfully and safely rejoin neighborhoods and families. We also recently hosted a webinar featuring the National Fatherhood Initiative and one of our fiscal year 2015 adult mentoring grantees, Sponsors Inc. in Oregon, talking about strategies for sustainability. I encourage everyone to also watch the Risk Needs Responsivity 101 webinar, which gives very helpful information on the R&R model. You'll also find information on serving young adults, on employment and reentry, and various other resources. If there's anything that you see on this webinar that you'd like access to, please let your TA provider know, and they can give you a direct link to it. Otherwise, I encourage you to browse our website. On this slide, we're showing you some additional resources that are outside of the NRRC. They include the 2 mentoring documents geared toward adult reentry programs, crimesolutions.gov and NREP, which provide information on evidence-based practices and curricula, the National Reentry Resource Center, a project funded by the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, which provides TA and support to mentoring programs with a focus on youth, as well as the Center for Evidence-Based Mentoring and its associated newsletter, The Chronicle. Both of those have a focus on youth mentoring, however, they provide very valuable information on mentoring practices, and both have done work with programs that serve young adults up to the age of 25. So now we'll go ahead and move into the question and answers portion of the webinar. So please remember that you can use the Q&A box on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen to submit your questions. And in the meantime, I'll put up the contact information for Andre Bethia at BJA, myself, and your TA providers. I'll be up on the slide right now. So we'll go ahead and take a few moments and see if anyone has any questions. All right, we just got a question about how soon will the PDF from this presentation be available. Ideally, it will be posted in the next few days, definitely before the end of the week. Once it is, like I said, you can find it on our website, but once the recording and the PDF has been posted to the website, your TA providers will also send you a copy, so you should be receiving that from Jan or Maureen. And it's looking like we did a decent job on this presentation because not too many questions are coming in. But we're gonna stay on the line a little bit longer just in case there are other questions that pop up. Another thing to keep in mind when in touch with your TA providers, just during this webinar, if anything stood out to you, like one of the grantees that Maureen mentioned from past cohorts who were doing a particular practice successfully that you'd be interested in learning more about, any of those resources we talked about, please let your TA provider know and they can help make that connection. All right, we just got a question about the P&I guide asking if it's required to be completed before you can move on to program implementation. It is actually not a requirement that you finish it before you can move on to program implementation. It will, however, be a crucial part of helping plan out the implementation plan. So with your TA provider, we encourage you to work collaboratively with them on completing that and also assessing what your timeline is to begin your program, to actually begin implementing your program. So they can work with you on that. There might be certain things in the P&I guide that you figure out are in flux or currently in a planning phase, that wouldn't necessarily inhibit your ability to begin offering services, but are something that you and your TA provider will continue discussing as you move on to implementation. A good example of that is sustainability. While it's very valuable to have a sustainability plan in place before you get started, obviously it's going to adjust and change as the program continues. So there will be some things that are in flux, but before you really dive into all your services, we encourage you to work on this guide with your TA provider so you can really nail down what the details of the program are going to look like, what the processes are, and also I don't think I mentioned it when talking about the P&I guide, but if you do have any materials for your program, such as program manuals, a mentor handbook, training materials for your mentors, we definitely encourage you to send those to your TA provider. It helps us, one, get a better handle on what your program is doing, but then also to see what different programs are doing so we can make suggestions to other programs that might be interested in approaching mentoring and reentry in a similar way. All right. So we're going to stay on just a few minutes longer just in case anyone else does have any other questions that pop up. All right, everybody, it looks like we don't have any other questions coming in, but that doesn't mean that if you think of anything after this webinar that you won't be able to get it answered. So I definitely encourage you to write down the contact information that you see on the screen if you don't already have information for your TA providers. Jan and Maureen's information is up there. Any questions that you have about the process of your grant, getting things moving, the TA that's available to you, as well as the grants management process, feel free to direct those. You can direct those to your TA provider. If it's something that's meant for BJA, they'll redirect you to Tracy Willis at BJA. Any questions that you have, feel free to also send to me. I'm happy to answer anything that I can. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation as well, the Community Initiatives team here at the Justice Center works on not just adult mentoring, but mentoring serving young fathers and young mothers. We also do some work around children of incarcerated parents. So I know that some of your programs have some overlap with those populations. Just keep that in mind when speaking to your TA provider. We can also provide additional resources around those different target populations, around those different issues as well. All right, well that concludes the webinar for today. I just want to say thank you again to Andre, Jan, and Maureen, and to everyone who joined us for today's webinar. I know we didn't have a lot of questions, but for those of you who submitted them, thank you very much. Once posted on our website, as I mentioned before, your TA provider will be able to provide you with a link to the recording of the webinar as well as a PDF of the slides. We definitely encourage you to sign up for our newsletter at csgjusticecenter.org/subscribe. In addition to just having useful information, we also send out critical information for Second Chance Act grantees around certain training events and additional learning opportunities. You'll also see information about other grantees being highlighted on our website, and if there's ever a grantee that you'd be interested in being connected with, your TA provider can assist you with that. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to be on the webinar today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your week.